In 1958, a classified Soviet military unit stationed in the Ural Mountains, codenamed Directorate 13, ceased to exist. Not disbanded, not reassigned. The entire battalion, 417 soldiers, 12 officers, and all equipment, vanished from official records overnight. Their barracks were found empty, their weapons gone, no transfer orders, no discharge papers, just silence. This wasn't an isolated incident. Throughout the 20th century, elite military formations with advanced training, cutting-edge weaponry, and strategic importance simply disappeared. Not defeated in battle, not dissolved through bureaucracy. They were erased as if they had never existed at all. The Phantom Brigade. During the height of World War II, British intelligence identified a German unit operating behind enemy lines in occupied France. Witnesses described soldiers in unmarked grey uniforms conducting raids with surgical precision. They struck supply depots, sabotaged railways, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. French resistance fighters called them the Shadows because they moved without sound and left no trace. Allied intelligence designated them the Phantom Brigade. Documents captured after D-Day referenced the unit in passing, logistical notes, supply requisitions, casualty reports, but never named their commanding officer or revealed their base of operations. By late 1944, reports of their activity ceased entirely. When Allied forces swept through France, they searched for the unit's headquarters. They found abandoned farmhouses, empty bunkers, and scorched earth. No bodies, no equipment, no prisoners who would admit to serving in such a unit. Decades later, a historian analyzing declassified Wehrmacht files discovered something disturbing. The Phantom Brigade's operational budget continued for 6 months after all sightings stopped. Funds were allocated. Supplies were shipped to coordinates that led to empty fields. Someone, somewhere, was maintaining the illusion of a unit that no longer existed. Or perhaps they had simply moved beyond the reach of conventional record-keeping. One former German officer, interviewed in 1987, claimed the unit had been recalled to Berlin in late 1944 for special reassignment. When pressed for details, he went silent. 2 weeks later, he recanted the statement entirely, insisting he had confused them with another division. He died 3 months after that interview. The coroner ruled it natural causes, the Silent Legion. In 1979, during the Soviet-Afghan War, a Spetsnaz reconnaissance company, designated Unit 5184, entered the Panjshir Valley on a classified operation. Their mission, according to partially declassified documents, involved advanced psychological disruption tactics and non-standard engagement protocols. The unit consisted of 68 men, all volunteers, all with backgrounds in linguistics, anthropology, and unconventional warfare. They were expected to return within 2 weeks. They didn't. Search teams found their last known camp, tents still standing, equipment neatly arranged, meals half-eaten. But no soldiers, no signs of struggle, no blood. Local villagers reported hearing strange harmonized tones echoing through the valley at night, a sound they described as voices without mouths. When Soviet commanders dispatched a second unit to investigate, that team returned shaken, refusing to speak about what they found. The official report listed Unit 5184 as missing in action, presumed lost to hostile engagement. But here's what doesn't add up. Intercepted radio transmissions from the weeks following their disappearance referenced Unit 5184 as still operational. Encoded messages included status updates, logistics requests, and tactical confirmations, all using proper authentication codes. The transmissions originated from coordinates deep within Soviet-controlled territory, hundreds of miles from the Panjshir Valley. When investigators visited those locations, they found nothing. No transmitters, no soldiers, just empty hills and wind. One signals officer who monitored those transmissions later stated, off the record, that the voices on the radio sounded wrong. Not distorted or damaged, just wrong. He couldn't explain it further. He requested immediate transfer to a different post and never discussed the matter again. The unit was quietly removed from all active rosters by 1981. Their service records were sealed. Families were told their loved ones died in combat, but no bodies were ever returned. No graves were ever marked. And yet, in 1990, nearly a decade after their official disappearance, a Soviet armory in Siberia reported a delivery of equipment signed for by an officer whose name matched the commander of Unit 5184. The signature was verified as authentic. The officer had been declared dead 9 years earlier. The armory's commanding officer, when questioned, insisted it was a clerical error. The signature must have been forged or the date miscalculated. But handwriting analysts found no evidence of forgery. The delivery logs matched standard protocol perfectly. And the equipment that was signed out, specialized communication gear designed for deep terrain operations, exactly what Unit 5184 had requisitioned before entering the Panjshir Valley. One final detail makes this case impossible to dismiss. In 2003, a documentary crew filming in rural Afghanistan interviewed an elderly man who claimed to have guided Soviet soldiers through mountain passes in 1979. When shown photographs of various units, he immediately pointed to an image of Unit 5184's commander. He said the soldiers had returned to his village multiple times over several years, always at night, always silent. They never spoke. They never removed their gear. And they moved, he said, like men who had forgotten they were men. The Vanishing Division. In 1953, during the final months of the Korean War, the US Army's 278th Regimental Combat Team was deployed to a contested region near the 38th parallel. Official records state the regiment participated in standard defensive operations before rotating home in early 1954. But a declassified intelligence memo from 1992 tells a different story. According to the document, in November 1953, the entire regiment, over 3,000 soldiers, vanished from their position for 72 hours. No communication, no movement, no trace. When they reappeared, they were exactly where they had been, in formation, as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. Medical officers reported that every soldier in the regiment exhibited identical symptoms: mild amnesia, disorientation, and an inability to recall the previous 3 days. Psychological evaluations noted a disturbing consistency in their confusion. It wasn't that they had different gaps in memory. They all had the same gap down to the minute. Commanders attempted to debrief the unit, but the soldiers had nothing to report. They remembered setting up camp. They remembered routine patrol schedules. And then they remembered waking up 72 hours later, as if no time had passed. Watches and chronometers within the regiment had stopped simultaneously, then restarted in perfect sync. Equipment showed no signs of damage or tampering. The memo noted one additional irregularity. Aerial reconnaissance photos taken during the 72-hour window showed the regiment's camp as abandoned, tents empty, vehicles idle, no heat signatures. Yet ground patrols sent to investigate found nothing unusual and reported the regiment as present and operational. The contradiction was never resolved. Within weeks, the regiment was quietly disbanded. Soldiers were reassigned to different units across multiple bases, ensuring no large group remained intact. Officers were instructed to classify all related documentation. When veterans of the 278th later attempted to organize reunions, they discovered that nearly a third of the roster had no traceable records post-1954. No service files, no discharge papers, no forwarding addresses. One former lieutenant, interviewed in 1989, said he remembered waking up in the camp with the overwhelming sensation that he had been somewhere else, somewhere cold, dark, and utterly silent. He couldn't recall details, only the feeling. Others described similar impressions. A few claimed they had dreams for years afterward, always the same, standing in formation in a place with no sky. If these units truly vanished, the question is not where they went. The question is what they became. Soldiers don't just disappear. Records don't erase themselves. And silence, when it spreads across thousands of men, across decades, across conflicting testimonies and classified reports, isn't absence. It's evidence. These weren't desertions. They weren't cover-ups for casualties. The patterns are too precise, the documentation too contradictory, and the silence too complete. Somewhere in the margins of war, beyond the reach of standard explanation, entire units stepped out of reality. Some came back, others didn't. And the ones who returned were no longer entirely sure what they had left behind. These 10 formations represent something far more unsettling than military mystery. They reveal a pattern where organized force encounters something that reorganizes it entirely, not through defeat, but through transformation. The Phantom Brigade's phantom budget, Unit 5184's impossible transmissions, the 278th Regiment's synchronized amnesia. These aren't failures of record-keeping. They're fractures in the assumption that soldiers, once deployed, remain within the boundaries of conventional space and time. What operates in those gaps, whether protocol, phenomenon, or something with intention, remains unacknowledged. But the pattern persists, written in missing rosters and forged signatures from the dead.